Hey guys, Flo from Off to Lens here. I'm a French-Australian filmmaker based in French Alps, and today we're going to talk about the BMPCC6K Pro again, but this time I'm going to compare it to my regular BMPCC6K. I've asked you guys to tell me about anything you wanted to know, anything you wanted me to test, and is the upgrade worth it was a very popular question. For this video, I will refer to the BMPCC6K as a regular 6K and the Pro as the Pro. So I'm going to focus on the similarities, differences, the pros of the 6K Pro, the pros of the regular 6K, the way I use my current 6K, Gen 4 versus Gen 5, which was my biggest surprise, and finally, is it worth the upgrade? Before I start, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and let's get into it. The regular 6K has been my main camera for over a year and a half now, and I love it. I have shot documentaries, travel videos, and even took it to Antarctica for work. Of course, it isn't the perfect camera, but for the price and what you get, it comes very close in my opinion. As I have mentioned before in my hands-on video, getting the Pro for me made sense since the NDs, better battery life, and a brighter tiltable screen are very useful features for documentary work, which I do a lot of. The similarities. If you're not familiar with these cameras, they're essentially the same on many aspects. They both feature a Super 35 6K sensor, have dual ISO 400 and 3200, you can shoot in RAW or ProRes in a wide variety of resolution and frame rates. And they also both come in EF mount and have 13 stops of dynamic range. The button layout, menus, and overall look is also very similar. One thing they also have in common is a relatively low price for the amount of features and image quality that you get. But of course, there is a Pro and a regular version. Now let's look at the main differences. Starting from the outside, you can tell that the Pro is of course much bigger and is heavier, and that is to accommodate the Pro features. The first and more obvious one is a tilting screen, which allows you to shoot from low or high angle and happens to be also much brighter at 1500 nits. The second feature is the addition of internal NDs. You have 2, 4 and 6 stops. Then the batteries, the Pro takes NPF ones, whilst the regular 6K runs on Canon LPA6. With the Pro you have the option to add a dedicated EVF as well. There's also an updated battery grip that can extend the battery life to almost 3 hours. And you can find an additional mini XLR input on the side as well. And lastly, the 6K Pro features the new Gen 5 color science, whereas the 6K is currently on Gen 4 and can be and will be updated to Gen 5. This part is very important in my case, as you will see in a bit. The pros of the 6K Pro. To me, the biggest advantage of the Pro is the amazing features you get right out of the box. The NDs, the brighter tiltable screen, and the ability to take NPF batteries. Another great advantage is that the 6K Pro is smaller than the regular 6K when rigged up to match up the features, since you have no cables and the screen is integrated, and the battery grip can also be attached to the Pro without having to use cables for V-lock, for example. To give you an idea, here are the accessories you need for the regular 6K in order to match the 6K Pro with the grip. There is also less moving parts, since it is essentially one bigger camera similar to the C200 for example, but of course it also becomes less modular. The possibility to add an EVF and a new grip are also huge pros, especially for documentary or outdoor shooters like myself. The pros of the regular 6K. Now let's look at the pros of the regular 6K. It is more modular, and therefore you can use the gear you already own and pick and choose the size and type of your setup depending on the job. It is also $500 cheaper, which means you can invest in other gear such as lenses. The 6K still features Gen 4, and for me this is a massive advantage, as you will see later in this video. The regular 6K is also slightly smaller and lighter, which can be a plus when traveling or when using on a gimbal. And lastly, you can find more accessories already available at the time of this video for the 6K than the Pro. I still do not have a cache for the Pro. The way I use my 6K. In order to understand my opinions, I want to share briefly my type of shooting. The way I use my BMPCC6K is mostly for documentary work, travel videos, as well as footage licensing. I shoot outdoors most of the time and prefer a run and gun setup, and I film handheld 90% of the time. This is why the Pro makes a lot of sense for me. Gen 4 versus Gen 5. Okay, so now the most surprising thing for me when comparing those two cameras is the difference between Gen 4 on the regular 6K and Gen 5 on the 6K Pro. Originally, when I first spent a few days with the Pro, the log files looked great and very similar to the regular 6K. As I mentioned before, they were slightly underexposed, but I applied a very quick grade and they look fine to me. But after comparing the Pro to the regular 6K for the purpose of this video and putting the footage side by side, I started to notice a difference. Here are some examples of ungraded frames taken with the same aperture, same white balance, same codec, same ISO, shot at the same time with both L-series Canon lenses at the same focal length. The ones with my wife in it have ND2 on the Pro and a variable ND set to minimum on the 6K. I know the look of an image is subjective, but for having shot with Blackmagic cameras for more than 7 years, I can honestly say that these files are the hardest to grade by far. Here's a quick example of me trying to match some files, grading them the same way you guys have seen for the past 2 years or more. A lot of people love Gen 5, so maybe it is just me, but when I look at the files, they seem less pleasing to me from a color and depth point of view. They still somehow have that beautiful Blackmagic image quality and the details are incredible as always, but I can't seem to see past the difference. I'm sure Gen 5 is actually better and more accurate, but I can't seem to put my personal touch on those files like I can with my 6K or with the 4K before that. Please let me know in the comments what you think if you have experienced the same. Is it worth the upgrade? So far, the 6K Pro is the best camera that I have used from an operating and filming point of view. Even after shooting just for over a week, I find it hard to go back to variable NDs and an external monitor. The extra battery life has been a very positive update as well, even without the grip. So yes, to me it is worth it. If you do documentary work, this camera has pretty much everything you need. And on top of that, you can also add an EVF and a battery grip later. It is also much nicer to have a more compact camera than having to rig up the 6K. When I was in Antarctica, for example, I wasn't able to bring my monitor on most locations since my rig had to be as small and compact as possible. The Pro would have made my job a lot easier. The 6K Pro can also be beneficial if you use your camera for travel and personal content and don't want to carry a rigged up setup all the time. I can see the 6K Pro being used as is more often than not. Now, if you already have a monitor, a V-Log battery, a variable ND that you like, and do not feel the need to ever add an EVF, then maybe it isn't worth it, and you would be better spending that money on lenses or media. For someone that shoots a lot in a studio environment, for example, or even short films, then rigging up isn't probably an issue, and the regular 6K would do very well. I don't think there is a right answer, it just depends on what you do and what you have already invested in other accessories. I think that's it for me for today, guys. Again, I will make a proper review once I have used the camera enough. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and let me know in the comments if you need to know anything else. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.